You guys, guess where I am? Guess where I am? I'm in my new apartment. I got my first apartment at 33. And I think the hardest part was believing in myself because growing up, I never felt like I was independent or like I was doing enough. And just to back up a little bit here, I always kind of felt like I was behind compared to other people. And if you go back a few videos, I made a similar video talking about growing up as a late bloomer and kind of growing up in a restricted household. So that video is way more comprehensive on that subject, but just to give you an idea of what I mean and where I'm going, I got my first job when I was 19. So I was already kind of behind compared to my peers. A lot of my friends or my classmates were already working when they were 16. They had their own phone, they paid their own phone bill, they were paying for their own clothes and buying their own groceries. And I did not have that. I didn't have an income or a bank account. I didn't even know how to get a bank account. So I remember wanting to get a job, but having no idea how to get one. I didn't have a resume. I didn't know how to make a cover letter. I was just trying to copy other people and be independent. So I got my first job at 19, and then I got fired from one of my first jobs because the manager said that I wasn't learning fast enough and I was struggling. And I was already kind of down on myself because I felt like I couldn't keep a job. I didn't have a savings account. I didn't have a girlfriend. I wasn't dating. I wasn't like other people. And I always thought, how can I keep up? Because, again, like I said in that video, it's not that I wasn't allowed to work. It wasn't really encouraged or suggested. And I just felt like I wasn't capable. For lack of a better phrase, I just felt like I wasn't capable. And I had no idea how to get an apartment or a roommate. Now, when I was 25, I had already gained more experience. I had been working in hospitality for about 5 or 6 years or so. And I was learning a lot of languages. I was already picking up Chinese, Spanish, and American Sign Language. So I already had a few skills and I was getting better at working in the hospitality industry. I got my first roommate at 25, moved out of my mom's house because just typical family drama, and I wasn't really getting along with my family. So I was like, okay, I have to move out. But I have no idea how. I had $700 in my pocket, and I don't know, by the grace of God or the universe, I was able to get the room without having the deposit. I straight up told the guy, look, all I have is $700. What do you want to do? Do you want to wait for me to get the money? Do you want to get someone else? And he said, look, okay, I'm desperate. You're desperate. Let's make a deal. And maybe you can pay off the money later on. I don't think I ever paid him back, but whatever. So I lived with a roommate for about 3 years, and this was right around the time where COVID was happening. So we went into lockdown, and I lived with a roommate who I didn't know or really get along with. And at a certain point, I just said, I can't do it anymore. This building is infested with roaches. I'm not happy here. It's hot as hell in the summer. I had to fight with you to get an AC. I don't want to do it, but I didn't want to tell my mom because I already moved out and I felt like I was kind of going backwards by moving back in with my mom. But you know how moms are. Like, no matter what you go through, family is always family. And my mom was like, just come back. It's okay. Your taxes, you owe too much taxes. You're not really doing well with money. Just come back, save money, and you'll figure it out. So I did that, and a few years passed by, and we'd fight or argue, and I was saving up money. I got really tired of working as a barista, and I just started applying to jobs as an interpreter. So I did my ASL screening and I passed, and I started interpreting and also working side gigs. And it wasn't until last October, so we're in 2026 now, right? Is it 2026? Yeah, 2026. So last October in 2025, I started looking for apartments. So keep in mind, I had really bad credit, never lived alone, I had no rental history, and in a way, I wasn't really good with money, if I'm being honest. So I would apply to apartments on Zillow, StreetEasy, Craigslist, you name it. I was out there. And similar to how I was looking for a job at 19 with no experience and no resume, I did the same thing with apartments. Now, even though I had no idea what the hell I was doing, I said, I'm going to be confident because you got to learn somehow. So I would always ask questions and I would kind of pretend that I knew what I was doing. But at a certain point, I said, just be honest. Like, nothing bad is going to happen. So I would tell people, yeah, it's my first apartment, so I don't know. And the realtors would always tell me, oh, okay, so yeah, the rent is this much. You'd be responsible for heat and water or gas and electric or whatever. And when I would start seriously applying, I would get hit with, oh, what's your credit score? And then when I would tell them, the realtors would look at me and be like, oh, that's going to be a problem. And when it first happened, I said, you know what, it's okay. It's not for me. But similar to how you look for a job and you know you can do it, you know you have the skills or the personality for it, when that door slams in your face, you're like, what the fuck? Am I that bad? Like, am I not good at selling myself? Do I not have skills? And you start to question your capabilities. And that would happen to me. I would keep getting rejected. I got rejected from 10 apartments. Yes. And I would just get really mad. And I found myself getting very bitter and resentful towards realtors. And I found myself being very shady and having an attitude with them and saying, well, most people in America don't have great credit scores. So, and I mean, even though it's true, at a certain point, I realized there's no point getting mad at them. Understand your situation. Okay, you don't have a great credit score. You're saving up money, so you're already doing something great. I had about $3,000, and whenever I looked on Zillow, it would give me a brief overview of what I would have to pay. So let's say the apartment was 1,500, right? I would have to pay the first month 1,500, and then it would say an additional 1,500, so that's a deposit, and then the application fee would be about $25 to $50. I'm not sure where you're watching from, but in New York and New Jersey, application fees would range from, I want to say, $25 to $50. For my current apartment, I paid $59. Yeah. But before we get to that, I was applying to apartments and I would just say, you know what, approach it with a different mentality. So before this apartment, I met with a realtor and he was showing me around the neighborhood and everything. And I really liked that apartment, but I didn't get it. And I got mad at him, but I said, you know what? It's not meant to be. If you didn't get it for whatever reason, it's not meant for you and something better is going to come, but you have to believe that it's happening. And I got this apartment. And funny story, when I was on my way to this apartment, because I was coming from the Bronx all the way to New Jersey. So I'm on my way, I'm running late. I hop in a taxi and the taxi driver is telling me, wait, you're going to this address? Please, brother, just be careful because it's not a good area. And I was dressed very different from how I'm dressed now. Like I was wearing my blazer, I was wearing dress shoes, slacks, and I'm a very soft-spoken guy. I'm not rugged or aggressive. So I think this taxi driver was looking at me like, "Are you sure you want to move to that neighborhood?" But I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure." And little did he know I came from the projects. Like I grew up in the Bronx, so I've seen worse things than what I'm about to move into. And when I get to the apartment, the realtor had already left. So when I called him, he said, "I did leave. We agreed to meet at this time. You're a little late, but no worries. I left the apartment door open. Here's the code to get into the building. Let me know if you have any questions." So he was already being very nice, and I had a very good feeling about it. But I approached it with humility. So instead of being frustrated and anxious like I usually am, I said, "You know what? I'm sorry, man. I know I was late. We had a commitment. Thank you so much for letting me still see the apartment." And he said, "No, no worries. Things happen. Life happens. I had to go, but like, see the apartment. And if you don't like it, no worries. I have another one that's like right around the block." And he didn't lie. It was literally right around the block. So I saw the first apartment. It was okay, but I didn't like it that much. And I called him shortly after I left the apartment, and he said, "Okay, I kind of figured you want something bigger, right?" So he tells me, "Okay, so this is the address and this is the code to get into the building. So again, this is the building that I'm in now." I walk in, I was like, "I want that apartment." So he's telling me how much it costs, and he says water and heat are included, gas and electricity is not. And me never living alone, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that means, but okay, sure. So I'm like, "Okay, I want to apply." He tells me that the application fee is $59. I told a coworker about it, and she was like, "Don't do it. That's a trap. It's a scam." And I was like, "Yeah, but I need an apartment." And she says, "But what if you don't get it?" And I said, "But what if I do?" So I quickly realized you can't listen to people because everybody was telling me no. They said New Jersey is too far from the city. It's going to be too expensive. You're going to be spending a lot of money. And they may have thought they were telling me the right thing, but they were wrong. And I applied to the apartment, and then I go to work the next day. Like, I forget that it happened. I wasn't even thinking about it. And the realtor called me and said, "Okay, so I looked up your social security number, and I did see that it's low." And I remember before I gave him my info, I said, "Just so you know, my credit score is low. Is that going to be a problem?" And he said, "Well, how low is it?" And I said, it's kind of low. It's down there." And he said, "That may be a problem. You know what? Don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. Still come see the apartment." So I was taking that with a very small grain of salt, but something in me said, just be positive. That's all you have left. That's all you can do. So I went through the motions, and he did say, "Okay, I saw that your credit score was low. Can you do me a favor? Write a short paragraph about yourself. Really sell yourself. Write the book. Your name, where you come from, your story. Maybe you can mention that, when you were younger, you weren't really aware of like how money and budgeting works." And I said, "You know what? I got you." I wrote a paragraph about myself, sent it over. Then he says, "Wait, can you do this?" He would keep calling me back and telling me to add more things. And I was like, "Ugh, I'm not going to get the apartment." And at one point he said, "The reason I keep calling you back is because I want to make sure that the manager who sees this can actually approve you. So because your credit score is low, it's not a problem, but like, we're going to like create a mental picture so they can be like, okay, cool. I trust this person to move in." So I was like, "Okay, I'll do it." Like, I don't believe in myself, but I'll do it. So knowing that this was probably my last option, I went to a coffee shop. I got my iced caramel latte, and I was like, sit down, be positive, write down everything, and just get your bank statements, have everything in order. And I think we left on a good note. And the realtor said, okay, I'm going to give you a call tomorrow or in the upcoming week. And I said, okay, whatever. And I just kind of forgot about it. I get to work and then I get a phone call and he says, I have great news. And I was like, okay. Still not really believing that I was going to get it. I was being very pessimistic. I'm not going to lie. And he said, you were approved for the apartment. And I was like, so I step out into the hallway because I was in math class. And he's telling me everything, like the price, the fee. And I'm not going to lie, I tuned him out because I was already thinking about, okay, so now what's next? I get a second job. I got a budget. I got to save more money. Like, I was just starting to overthink and I filled up with panic. And we went through the motions. I asked him a lot of questions and he told me, okay, the only thing I'm going to ask from you is that you have to pay this amount. So it was the first month, the security deposit, and then the admin fee, plus the application fee. So I saw the apartment without paying the application fee. And even though I accepted the apartment, I didn't end up paying the admin fee until like maybe a week before I moved in. And I told him, okay, how much is it? And he said, so basically it would be 4,100. And I was like, I don't have that. I have $3,000 in my savings and I have some change in my checking account, like most people probably do after living life. And I said, I can do it, but I don't have everything right now. And he said, oh, you don't have to pay it right now. Like, just pay a partial amount and then you can pay the rest. And I said, okay. And he said, when do you want to move in? And I was like, to be safe, I'm going to say April 1st or the following week. But let's say April 1st. We're going with April 1st. And he said, okay, perfect. And I said, yeah, like I can pay half now. And he says, you have it now? And I'm like, yeah, like I do save money. I am responsible. And he's like, okay, perfect. Like he kind of thought that I wasn't serious about it, I guess. But it ended up working out. When my last paycheck of the month hit, I was like, hey, I got the money. Can I send it to you? I sent it over and then I was approved. And it still didn't feel real. I was kind of walking around life like, okay, well, I still live with my mom. I'm not living alone yet. It's not real. It's not real until I have the keys in my hand. But I did it. And I started planning everything. Like, I stopped buying groceries because I was going to no longer be living with my mom. I started buying things little by little for my apartment. And it felt like, even though I already had the apartment, I kept hitting roadblocks. So in order to move in, I had to set up something called a PSEG account. So I never heard of that. I've only ever heard of like Con Edison, but I think in New Jersey and in Long Island, they use PSEG. So I'm trying to set up an account. My feet feels like static right now. Oh my gosh. Um, Trying to set up an account, and for some reason I couldn't do it. I'm getting frustrated. I couldn't make an account, and I'm like, you mean to tell me I did the hard part? I got approved for this apartment, but I can't set up the electric bill app. So he said, you know what, it's fine, it's okay. But he told me, you know, I can't give you the key until you set up your account. And I was like, well, legally you have to. And he calls me and we start talking about it. And then I got really mad at him. And I'm like, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, I paid for the apartment. It's mine. Like, why are you making it complicated? It's not my fault I can't make the account. And, you know, we both get anxious and we both start kind of not arguing, but going back and forth. And he says, I don't know why you're getting so upset. It's in your lease. And in my mind, I'm like, I don't think I read that part. And I have a natural tendency to think things are gonna go south. I realize that about myself. Like, whenever things get hard, like whenever it gets like a little hard, I'm ready to just give up. I don't want to do it anymore. I used to quit jobs. I used to walk away from friendships. I used to just basically abort mission whenever I felt like things were getting stressful. And I stopped and realized, okay, I was really rude to him. And he basically helped me get an apartment. So I was like, I am the worst person on this planet. So we had already hung up, and I got water after having 2 cups of coffee and being anxious. And I texted him and I said, "Hey, I'm really sorry for being an asshole. Like, I know you did a lot to help me, and I feel really bad." And he called me and said, "You know what? Like, we're gonna set up a 3-way call and call them directly because for whatever reason the app is not working. So let's do it that way." So we did it, and I managed to set it up in between, my busy day at work and his busy day working as a realtor. And we set it up. And I remember saying, like, "I'm really sorry." And he said, "No, I understand. You were frustrated, and I would have been too." And I told him, "Yeah, but I want to make sure that, I'm sorry because, like, I feel like you did a lot to help me. You don't even know me. And I don't want you to think I'm not grateful because I am." And I was telling my mom about it. She was like, "I'm happy you apologize because the last thing somebody wants to think is, damn, I helped him get this apartment and that's how you treat me." So I realized a lot about myself. Like, I get very anxious. I want to give up too easily. And when you live alone, you can't really give up that easily because there's no one around you. Like, if I don't do it, it won't happen. If I don't clean my house, it's gonna stay dirty. If I don't pay my rent, I might get evicted. If I don't meal prep or set my alarm, like, I can only look at myself. But the whole experience taught me it'll happen, and never compare yourself because I'm in my 30s and I got my first apartment. I met a guy who's 36 and he got his first apartment. And I realized there really is no timeline. Who told you you have to move out and be on your own at age 22? You have to understand that as we get older, everyone's a different age. So as we get older, life changes. The job market changes like every 5 years. The housing market changes every 5 years. Dating changes every 5 years. You see where I'm going with this? Maybe for our parents, it was easy for them to live alone at age 30 or 25. But now that I'm 33, looking for an apartment is very different from how it was for our parents. Even only 3 years ago, if you think about it, looking for an apartment was very different. At least in New York, you didn't need a perfect credit score to get an apartment. You didn't need to have like all these bank statements and make 3 times the rent because I guess landlords trusted you more, or maybe we just didn't have all these necessary requirements. But I say that to say, no matter how hard it gets, just know that it's going to happen, but you got to have faith that it will happen. It took me, let's see, I started looking in last October and we're in April of next year. So it took me a long time. A lot of doors were closed in my face. But the apartments I were rejected from were great, but not as good as this one. Like, I saw an apartment that was going for the same rent as what I'm paying now, and it was a studio. Not too far from where I live now. And it made me realize if you don't get something in life, whether it's a job or the girl you really want, or maybe you don't get the job you've been preparing for weeks, there is a reason why you didn't get it, and that is your protection. Rejection is always God's blessing. So at the time, I didn't see it as a blessing. I saw it as, why is this happening to me? Like, why is everyone else getting approved for an apartment, but I'm not? But when I look back on it, I look at it as a beautiful thing. I got approved for an apartment with poor credit. I never thought it would be possible. Like, everyone around me was saying, dude, just improve your credit. It's the only way. And in the back of my mind, I was like, you're wrong. Like, I'm not going to improve my credit in like a month. That takes months to improve. So when you're looking for an apartment, especially if it's your first time, keep in mind that the more people you tell, the more opinions you'll get. And it gets overwhelming because everyone has their own opinion because everyone else has their own experience. Like, there are people who moved out, lived on their own, and they signed a lease before seeing the apartment. Or maybe they paid their rent late or whatever. Like, everyone has their own experience. So it's nice to get input, but remember that at the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is yours. And I say that to say, if I could do it as disorganized and as type B as I am, you can do it. Especially for all like the young men out there, I feel like it's hard for everyone, but especially for men. I feel like society is harder on men because we're supposed to just be strong, tough, have holistic thinking, and be good at problem solving. And whenever you complain or get upset, society just tells you to man up. So I want to be one of the few guys to tell you, like, it's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be down on yourself, but get back up and keep going. And I think that's it for this video. I'm holding my foot because my foot fell asleep. I need to drink more water. But thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.